Hey, somewhere on here. Okey dokey. All right, so we're gonna call this public hearing and regular meeting of the Deeper Planning Zoning Commission to order, October 17th, 2024. It's now 7 o'clock PM. Roll call, Tony Baldock, Chair. Lisa Di Maria.
Here.
Jonathan Kastner.
I'm here.
Alan Parody.
Here.
Dan Reinheimer.
Here on Zoom.
He's on there. He's just.
Yeah, you hear me?
All right, we'll skip that for now. Timothy.
He said, Tony, can you hear us?
Daniel, you're muted. Other than that,
I'm here. If you can you hear me at all?
maybe Daniel's got to sign back out and sign back in. While he's connected audio video wise, I'm gonna move on. Item 2, audience of citizens.
I'm here
Citizens.
too.
Oh, did I skip you?
Yes.
I did. All right, Marion States here. Sorry about that.
That got me for forgetting the name.
That's all right. We're gonna be in trouble later. I got something we have to address. Audience of citizens. Citizens may address the commission on items that are not on the agenda. Yes, from the audience.
I was on Bob Shepherd, my name's up it up. Still wondering about 214 next.
So I've driven by there since the last time we talked about this. It looks like they cleaned everything out. They actually took the porta potty out of there. The interior's gutted and they took the chimney down, but doesn't like everything's off site now.
Whenever they had permits, should they been hung on front?
They should have.
They got the permit for the chimney after it was down.
Sounds like it.
And the side porch.
Yep,
So they have, you got no plans in that place yet.
we have not, Zoe's on, no. We have seen nothing.
We haven't received anything. They went to building for the demolition permits, but yeah, zoning has not received any plans. And I did tell building to let us know before issuing any further permits related to demolition. So far, they were only permitted to do the chimney and the porch, so the structure itself does not have a demolition permit, to my knowledge.
But I think the other day they were in there, probably maybe upstairs, knocking on plaster and that.
The interior is just the building department. Exterior stuff is planning and zoning.
But they don't, yeah, and inland wetlands, wherever they
Yep, the exterior
they
stuff.
say they're gonna fill in. the
Yep, that would- anything, so permit wise, it would go to wetlands first, and then the building.
All that stuff will be, it'll come through here, be noticed in a big, because I noticed for tonight, was nothing in there.
I do
Yeah,
believe, that the wetlands agent is aware, and I need to check in with him, because I don't know if he was planning to or already has gone on site at the property. But I do know that if he has not done it yet, which he might have, but it's on his radar as well. So the inland wetlands agent is also on it.
Not upset about putting that type of stuff here. Because we do need, and I want to make sure I'm not gonna get water pushed back in my cellar.
Yep.
And Mike's across the street. The package store couldn't put a cellar in there because it was too much water.
I remember that.
You know, so we definitely got a problem there.
Yeah.
Plus, under that property, there's the drainage for town.
Yes.
And hopefully they know where that stuff is, and that's not. Right.
Technically, removal of the porch constitutes a modification to the footprint of the building.
Yeah.
Modification to the footprint of the building requires zoning approval prior to a building permit.
That's what,
So we are non-conforming as a town in issuing a building permit for demolition if it alters the footprint.
unless Zoe signed off on it. It doesn't have to come to the commission. It can go just straight to zoning. Zoe, did you see the permit for that and okay it?
No, but I've done zoning in several towns and the demolition historically has only been to building. I've never received permit stuff as it pertains to zoning for demolition. So,
Per the information published on our town website, in order to issue a building permit, which would include a demolition permit that alters footprint, it requires zoning. We've been through this before in the tier 4 with the building department. I think we just need to make sure that all of our town employees are following our own regulations, because we backing into this, once it's gone, we have very little recourse to correct it, and obviously it's an issue that.
could you send me the language that you're citing so that I can make sure I have it?
Yeah, I think I had forwarded it previously. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it is in the building department regulations. And the
Okay,
process.
yeah, because I was only checking the zoning, so.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really under the purview of the building department and a requirement imposed on issuance of permits within building permit. So
Okay.
you're correct. It's not a zoning issue where there's nothing that we can act on as of yet, but.
Right. I think what he's saying is the building department should have brought it to you and said, is this okay to do? And, right, like we do with wetlands.
No, and I did talk to Paula, who manages the permit process, and she, for anything else that might come with that property in particular, she knows to bring it to me first before anything happens, so. Unfortunately for the porch and the chimney, those permits were issued, but we did at least talk about that, but also having that actual language is good to know. Cause yeah, I was checking just the zoning regulations, since that's what
Yeah.
so.
That's pretty much it. Other than saying, I was talking to someone who did in this building a couple days ago or whatever about it, and they said, oh, it was rotten. What difference does it make? They took it down. You end up putting it in front of the building. It
Right.
does. Otherwise, if I got a rotten, my house is rotten.
Yeah.
I can take it down without any permits.
The other issue is that it is within a village district, and that type of alteration removal is considered, what's the language we settled on? Not significant, but
Took the minutes back.
you know, substantial. So
Put me on the spot.
that really would require design advisory review for the removal of a architectural feature in the village district.
There were two words, there was significant and substantial that we removed. All right, so you're.
Yeah,
all set?
and, oh, sorry.
All right.
I have to review just what was recently amended, because we might need to do one more amendment for consistency.
Okay.
Because that was something that I was looking at in the village district regulations, where one definition is actually defined, and then that definition is actually not used moving forward, a different word is used. So we might need to bring it back and amend again to make sure all of that's consistent, but I need to check it with the new amendments, because maybe that's already been rectified.
Okay,
So,
good enough. All right, don't want to get anyone else, audience of citizens, so on to approval of minutes. September 19th, 2024, regular meeting. Do we have a chance to read them? Or do you have a motion to approve or amend?
Do you want to make a motion to approve the minutes as written and as submitted?
Thank you, Lisa. Jonathan? Yeah. All right, Stan?
Yeah,
Marion?
Yay.
And Daniel, if you're available.
Yes,
We got you. Fantastic. Little bit of feedback, and we got you. Okay, on to item 4, public hearing. Special permit application for a new single-family home over 4,000 square feet in the Gateway Zone, Marywood Lane, map 69, lot 8. Applicant Nicole's. And Doesn't look like they are here. And, anyway, go ahead. You were gonna say
No,
something?
yeah, I was just. I would hate to put them kind of, to make things awkward. I have a couple of questions and I would just like someone to relay the questions to them. I know it's a little cumbersome with public hearings. You don't want to get too much without.
Right.
Um,
Well, I was gonna elaborate on one thing. So, I know a couple of the questions, a couple of the comments that we had. One of them was about the view easement. So I actually did grab the subdivision map and it does have the view easement on it.
Oh.
So you guys can see it if you want. We actually have the language. You're gonna like this because if you read the view easement, anything behind the view easement in their deed declares that any tree cutting can only be approved by the neighbor and the adjoiners, and that they can only limit so much, and the only clearing you're allowed to do is for 7. It's pretty elaborate. So anyway, I still think it should be on the plan.
Right.
But it is here if you guys want to read it. So I think that, because I know that was a big concern of everybody's, was the tree clearing and what was going to happen there. So
And mine was the fact that they should, I know that the reserve is usually not put in at the same time as everything else. However, they show grading in the town's right of way.
Yeah.
That without getting permission from the first selectman or whoever, that's awkward.
yeah, that's a permit from the town. for-
Right,
There was also a condition for moving forward with the application,
Okay.
that those, record of those, easements were included with the application, so.
the only other thing is the grading is very close to the property line on the west side. And I'd like to see a true planting plan, not a drawing, but
I
a
was gonna-
regular.
If you looked at the drawing, those that they did submit, it doesn't actually go over the sewer line. So I was actually gonna mention that. And then the other thing that because I did write these down, the other thing that we were talking about was dissipation on the swales and dimensions from the house to the property lines, like a zone chart. So anyhow,
So if somebody can mention that to them so that they're prepared for the next meeting, Zoe's nodding her head. I think we're getting close. You may
Yeah,
be-
so I emailed them actually because they let me know that they weren't gonna be able to attend, so I asked them if they would be able to attend the November meeting. So I think it would be good if we kind of, emailed them a list of everything that is still missing for the November meeting, and I think let's see, he said he can attend the next meeting, so that's not, I guess we have to have permission to extend this further from the applicant because we are kind of past that normal 60 days now with them, but they seem amenable to that. So he said he can attend the November meeting. So I think, Tony, you said you already had a list, so maybe let's add whatever the new things are to that existing list and let's share that with them so that and I'll confirm with him that like they have permission. I'll email him back right now. That they're good with moving forward to extending the public hearing another month.
yeah, I went back through and re-listened yesterday, so. But I'm gonna have a punch list, just I'll read it to you guys, make sure I'm not missing anything. It was dimensions to the building and the setback lines. The view easement added, the lot width definition, you'd mentioned an average. The zone chart, that wasn't at the last meeting, but I think that's really helpful in improving a lot of stuff. Dissipation on the swales and the footing drain and the clearing limits. Again, the photo didn't go over the septic line, so I don't think that's correct. They miss anything?
Also, they included a letter from Dick Layton regarding the septic system. And that seems from 2006.
So I read through that. So Dick Layton had approved it in 2006 because he was the sanitarian. And we went to CRAD and CRAD had to reapprove it. So they did
Okay.
reapprove it.
They did. all
Yeah,
right.
they
They
just included the
submitted a
overlay.
new CRAD document. I added it to the folder. So that was recent. I think my concept of time is so loose right now, but they recently sent the updated CRAD document.
It was approved by Brad.
Okay, good.
All right, so is that everything, or are you guys gonna remember? Okay,
I think everything, all the comments were recorded in the minutes, so we just gotta make sure that we will hold them to the conditions that were voiced during the prior meeting, 2 meetings ago, because we did continue last month.
Yeah.
And then the new comments from Mary.
I'll email these to you, that way they're right in the email, since I already typed them up.
Thank you.
So we need a motion to continue.
Motion to
I'll make a
continue.
motion.
No, Stan did also.
All right, Stan, I'll give it to Stan.
Sure.
You a second?
Yep.
All right. Lisa,
I,
Jonathan? Hello. Alan?
Yes.
And Daniel?
Yes,
Okay, old business, special permit, oh, no, we're gonna skip that one, sorry. Item B, ARPA funds, the RFP for the downtown master plan. So we talked about that last, I'm sorry, Plan of Conservation Development meeting. And I'm assuming everybody's seen the email. Alan had a bunch of good comments. I think they're all in there now. The next step is to put this out for an RFP. If everybody's good with it. Any comments?
So is this gonna go to, or targeting specific firms, or is this going to be a public request that is open?
Well, I think would be a public request that's open, but I think, I can't remember if we discussed this. Again, there's so many meetings. I thought it was SLR, Tyke, the Main Street LLC, that the Board of, excuse me, that, EDC hired, and was there a fourth one that we specifically wanted to send it to and put it out to the general? Or was it just the three?
Those are the 3 that I was aware of that had been explicitly mentioned as receiving the RFP, but I didn't know if there was another avenue for qualified firms to access the RFP.
I know the website, or the town website usually just puts RFPs on there, so if you're interested, you can that way, but I don't know if there's anybody else targeted.
Okay, but it isn't noted as being exclusive to those invitees, so that there can be other applicants.
Yes. Okay. Anybody have any changes they want to add to this, or? I think we need a motion to put this out there.
I make the motion to what is the proper term here, to issue the RFP as published on the website.
All right. Looking for a second. Second.
good.
All right, Jonathan. Good second.
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Marion,
I,
and Daniel.
aye,
Great, guys, fantastic. All right, on to new business, the short-term rental regulations. I have somewhere in this pile. So the Board of Selectmen have asked us to take a look at somewhere in here, and somewhere in my file. Right, there we go. The short-term rental regulations that the town of Essex put out, and they worked on this for quite a while. I know John from, I'm gonna say Zoe's office, worked on these. And it's actually, I believe John said today that Chester has something very similar. I have read through this, a couple of comments that I have is Essex limited it to 180 days out of the year. My concern with that is Chester eliminated that, and if you are going to allow, well, let's be honest, right now, they're allowed anyway, because people are using them. This just gets this to be a licensed thing where the town can, receive a fee and there's some kind of oversight. But if it was up, I would take the 180 days out, just say be, all year long, but that's just me. Have all of you read this? What are your thoughts?
I don't know where they got the 183 days. It's kind of a weird number.
Right.
I think my concern is if you have one in your neighborhood and you really want it to be a single family neighborhood.
Hmm.
Having people coming in and out on a constant basis, I'm not sure how I would like that. And again, that's just kind of an off the cuff type of thing.
But, but they are allowed now. I mean, so this is, the only thing this is changing really is to, you know, have them pay a fee and have it inspected. I believe.
Well, having them inspected, I think is good. Ironically, it's funny that historically, boarding houses were considered just awful
Right.
for the longest time,
Yes.
and you couldn't have one. And these are now worse than boarding houses,
Yeah.
you know,
The,
that's all. It's just kind of ironic.
I think it
you know,
limits events too, doesn't it? Like
Yes.
weddings and, that's gonna be interesting because there's one, the mansion up on the hill on River Road that they clear cut.
Yep.
They do weddings, they do
yep,
big events. So that's gonna eliminate that.
Right. and
Which is good as far as I'm concerned, but
right, and then exactly, it brings them into some kind of compliance.
Although I think that would be a very hard, difficult thing to really enforce. That's all.
So I've been through a lot of these on the side of the river as well, and typically what drives these is providing some ability to crack down on renters who are not being controlled by the
Please.
by the owner. And the force falls on it, becomes a burden of the township or local police or whatever, without the clear ability to do so. So what it does, it puts burden on the property owner. Which is clear in some of the language on this particular one. But I've seen it where the regulations are being written for short-term rentals, vacation rentals, more so than the B&B type scenario. This one, as an example, is cracking down on, you know, kind of the B&B scenario, which doesn't allow, you know, the owner to offer food, the second B portion on that. So it's getting very specific because these regulations are being adopted from one town to the next, to the next, to the next, with nuances being addressed, which like the 180 days is like, oh, we'll let everything else go through, but 180 days seems arbitrary. I think the whole thing is arbitrary because I want to see the justification as to why we want to change our ordinance because our neighbor has, you know, put this regulation forward. I want to be clear on what the benefit is and what the impact is on, you know, property owners in town. It's been allowed and now property owners won't be allowed. The others will be grandfathered in. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the penalty part of this, that if there is a requirement for enforcement, that it results in revenues to support that effort. Because otherwise, we're just creating a burden on enforcement, however that comes through. And potentially a impossible scenario to enforce it equitably. Especially when it comes to wedding venues, you know, event venues, that falls into a different category that we should already be able to enforce. But when we look at this one, it's regulating Airbnbs more so than vacation rentals. And I think I just think it needs to be handled comprehensively and specific to Deep River's interests And I would think that before we entertain this, we're clear on why. Are there, existing problems that are on record? Is there, has EDC weighed in on this? Because there's a lot of different perspectives. People that run inns right now, it would not be, the Airbnbs or the longer term rentals are not beneficial for that segment, but for a property owner, it would be. Especially if you can create a revenue stream from the property you own. So again, I think it's a little more complicated to say this kind of sounds okay. Because there's implications in regard to existing property rights. And there's, I think, significant implications on enforcement and that burden. So, and the other ones that I've looked through, one of the shortcomings, and I think it's with a lot of the regulations, is how do we pay when we implement these things? And then it has to go, we really need to look at our ordinance and the results of and the balance of a revenue stream from these additional requirements. I mean, I think so. That's where I stand. So I'd like to see a statement as to why this one's being coming forward. It doesn't come from our POCD. It doesn't come from claims or issues that I'm aware of in town. But if we change and keep up with the neighboring towns, there's a lot of unvetted issues.
So I think we're just using this as a talking point, wasn't this one? But if we are gonna look in, I mean, if we're open to looking into this, the new one that you've seen that does have citations and enforcements that you can point it, like, we can look at? I mean, you don't have to answer it now, it doesn't.
I have, but it's specific to short-term rentals, not the, not the
Like, they're
really short, like more the vacation rentals.
yeah.
Relation or the properties that are rented for a between 2 weeks and 3 months.
Okay. I mean, does everybody kind of agree with that, then?
I had some questions.
Yeah, fire away.
Kind of agree with Alan, but I had some questions for Zoe. Zoe, first one is kind of a three-part question. How many complaints per month on average do we get because of these kind of rentals?
I don't receive, I haven't received any complaints. I got one person saying, hey, there's somebody living on the second floor of a place that, it's vague enough that maybe it was a short-term rental, maybe it wasn't, but coming to my office, I don't generally receive those kinds of complaints.
Okay, that's good. That answers that. And then a couple of questions I had about this whole thing was, it talks about a designated official. Who's going to be the designated official? Because we have our zoning officer who works, how many hours a week do you work in the office, Zoe? 6?
Oh my gosh,
6, 7?
8:30 to noon, but although I've been working through lunch a little bit, but
Okay, so 7 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
twice a
You put
week.
in 7 hours a week. That's enough time to get in, get your email going, see what your workload looks like, but to now take on 6 pages of this, the way that it's written, I agree with Alan that we've got to look into this a little bit more. I have a lot of other questions, but now wouldn't be the time. Maybe we can just
Well, yeah,
whittle this down a lot and
Yeah,
then
this-
look at it.
right, this wasn't for action, this was just to make sure we're talking about this. So,
And I think the first step is state the problem we're trying to fix.
Yeah, we don't have one that's according to zoning at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. I want the whereas
Right.
before the therefore.
Well, the overall motivation, I'm sorry, I had my hand up. nobody noticed. Yeah, because I've been going through the list, 180 days, the only one location. I mean, that basically suits it for one kind of homeowner who lives in Deep River during the summer and then goes to Florida during the winter and rents out their place or something like that. Which, if that is the reasoning, but the town's going to ask why, and I don't see any reason for half of these stipulations. I mean,
Not at this point.
yeah, I mean, if I was giving context, I don't see anything wrong with the overall ordinance as an ordinance in and of itself. And I talked to some of my neighbors who do own dwellings as to, and they're like on board. They're like, okay, that could be fine. But I just don't understand why we have a couple of those points in there.
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments, and it's kind of unique for me because I happen to have one right across the street. I wouldn't consider it a little home that rents out once in a while. It's a big mansion up on a hill that has big events, and we have regulation for bed and breakfasts with events, but we have no regulations for that. So in that unique situation, I think we need some kind of regulations. And maybe it doesn't across all the different types of rentals, but clearly, you can't have big weddings in a home, in a residential area with no controls.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it, bed and breakfast, you need the fire department to have regulation.
Yeah.
How many people per room. So I think we need some.
So it is enforceable right now, the condition you're talking about, because they're hosting events for revenue, operating a business, a residence. That business is not allowed use. So that isn't enforceable under our regulations because they're not renting a room. And the person that's renting a room is partying.
Yeah.
They're hosting an event.
Yeah.
And so we've got areas where, like under the, like an agricultural use, you can have a agritourism auxiliary function, but it's auxiliary to a permitted use.
Yeah.
So again, some of the issues that we cite, we can enforce. So I recommend you file a complaint. But
And I can do that, but in this case, a wedding will happen, for instance. And it's happened, so there's no regulation that says the owner has to get a permit to have a wedding in their Airbnb. So what will happen is they'll have an event, whether it's a wedding or retirement or something, so the complaint has to be at that day, on that weekend, to, I guess, who, the police?
well, herein lies the rub, because we do modify our ordinances to put some teeth in that, because if you do host an event, you can complain later on that if it's documented that they hosted an event without permit, and then that owner can be fined, which creates a revenue stream in order to support that enforcement and protect the
Or the
rights.
license can be revoked for a period of time, which is a huge financial penalty on them. So not necessarily good for the town, but that would make sure that they're vetting better and not allowing things to occur on their property that aren't under an ordinance. Listen, I stayed in Deep River. I learned about Deep River because the first 3 years I lived here during the summers was through a vacation rental. And that vacation rental is right next door to me. I bought the house next door when it became available. And I rent it sometimes when family comes to visit. Of the 10 years that I've been in this property, we've had like one bad incident. And it was because it was a bachelor party and they're fishermen and everybody wanted to be on our little pond at the same time. And it really wasn't bad. It just freaked me out. Right. But I think unless we're going to be surgical and say, okay, it has to be for this and grant a license, anything else, it won't stand up in court. I mean, the idea of telling somebody that you can only own one house, this is America. You can own as many as you want.
So-
And the corporations that this could be, if that is the reason to keep these bad guy corporations out, they have lawyers that know how to get it all around that. So I think it really needs to be thought out of what the direction is.
And
I mean,
this
this will help affordable housing too, by the way. I was, it's a little thing for affordable housing. We don't end up like Westbrook, where 47% of our units are seasonal units, 47%. That's how they're getting the big, big development is able to come in, because there aren't enough units for people to live there. You can't say, oh, we have all these houses. Like, no, you don't. You might as well not exist. So in that way, it does help us if we restrict it.
I just don't see that this particular draft that we're looking at or something like this is going to help Tim's problem. I think that's a different.
Yeah.
Different kind of regulation.
Yeah.
And this needs a lot of work.
Yeah. I think there's a big difference between a,
Sorry.
yeah, I think there's a big difference between a home with three bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and this unique situation.
But
I'd
again,
be happy to share just some more examples. This was a recent example that but if this is something that the commission does want to just at least explore more thoroughly, I can pull, do some research and pull from some other towns and maybe some other states just to see what other places are doing for review. And
I'd like to see some more, because I think licensing and inspecting is, it's a good revenue for the town, providing licensing can pay for an inspector, right? Can compensate for that, or that could be a separate fee. But also it's a safety, right? It's best to make sure that people aren't trying to pack too many people into a vacation rental, because that can be very dangerous. And we don't want Deep River to show up for something like that.
So again, the licensing and inspections, that's covered by another entity. That doesn't have to be, that's not a zoning enforcement issue. That's regulated elsewhere, and you delegate that enforcement and regulation. But again, to me, it's if I were to look at this and look at EDC's initiatives, the POCD, that short-term rentals are in line with the vision for the town in developing revenue and making it a place that's viable for tourism and for visitors. So limiting it, I don't see it being in alignment with the vision right now. But I think that the enforcement on bad actors is what we need to focus on. It's not the use that we need to regulate. It's the violation of usage, which in the draft that's here, all it says is that the people who are using are subject to the same regulations of, noise and activities. But what it does do is makes the property owner
Liable.
liable, so that you can go after the property owner. I think that's.
Alan,
Yes.
I agree with what you said pertaining to, it's other actors outside of zoning. I think it's something that's been brought up in a few different ways already is like how many people are in a room or a house, that's like a fire code issue. And like, that would be something that you would want the fire marshal to be able to have some kind of purview to, which is why I think the reason that we chose this, at least to show as a discussion, I have no skin in the game either way. You guys decide whatever you want. But the reason that we chose this was because it's an example of an ordinance versus a zoning regulation. So in an ordinance, it could involve more than just whatever is relevant to zoning. So the fire code, the building code, etc.
That was my understanding. It was being shared with us so we could give our input, but it isn't
Yes,
really
yeah.
under our.
Yeah, so it's, so this was just a starting point. But I do think the one thing that we do recommend from our standpoint, if the PZC or the town as a whole wanted to move forward in any fashion with something with short-term rentals, would be the ordinance versus a zoning regulation.
I've been thinking about this, and I think the way Alan stated this is so. Again, this is singling out a specific group, but maybe what you said about enforcement and citations is the better route. I mean, why limit it at all? Just there should be better enforcement. You should have, you should have to register. I mean, this is, I'm just shooting from the hip here. You register your short-term rental, which brings in a fee to the town. Then you're on the radar, so you have to get a health, fire, et cetera, inspection, and there should be a fine schedule. Because right now you're just saying, don't do this again, or we won't give you your permit. Right, and I think it was 30 days, yeah, for 30 days. So I think this could probably be slimmed way down, and if it is an ordinance, which it probably should be if it's gonna have citations. So maybe it's just that, registering enforcement citations and not so specific. You know, I mean, if you guys are, you know, okay with that, we do have to talk about.
I'm in total agreement with that. That's, I mean, when I read it and thought about the fact that it's a totally unregulated industry in our town and in most of the shoreline, that's kind of scary. I mean, if anything, we should at least know which units are, you know, which ones are there. And if it comes back on the town, it costs money to enforce anything, as we know, right? So yeah, license it, regulate it. It's cost of doing business.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, so if you guys are good with that, I mean, maybe we'll see what we can dig up and get another one. Anyway.
Yeah, I like Daniel's
As long
point, that
as our-
they're invisible, right?
Right.
And if it doesn't fall on our zoning officer, then I'm gonna get that too, because it's.
Yeah, I don't think it should. I think this is more confusing because it has. to do
Yeah,
with
it's all the stuff
regulating activity.
It happens at night and on weekends, and our zoning officer doesn't work in nights and weekends, so.
Right, she could be the one who takes in the fees, registers them and sends them on down and.
Yeah, it is really hard for me to enforce noise when I'm not there when it's happening.
I promise, I think it's not. I mean, it doesn't fall
The other
under
thing
zoning.
is these homeowners, they're gonna be liable too, because if they rent it out and their homeowner's insurance doesn't cover something and they have a deck on the back, a balcony, and
Yeah.
20 people walk out there and it collapses, I mean.
Yeah.
What do you?
Just last year, we had an Airbnb.
I was gonna bring that up, but there was the murder in the Airbnb too, so. Right,
Things happen.
okay, all right, so that's, I mean, if you guys are good with that, we'll look for something that's just a lot slimmer and come back at this.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, if it's going as an ordinance, it's just for us.
Well, we're gonna get to that next. So, okay, so I don't think we need to vote on this. I think this is more research. Okay. On to reports. Oh, I'm sorry, we skipped one. New business item B, the blight ordinance. So you guys got an East Windsor one. Looks like somebody made some comments. Again, this is discussion. What are your thoughts? I mean, I personally, if I had a magic wand, I would say, look, the sidewalks are one of our most important things. And the town crew should go out and have to trim your hedges one time. And after that, it's a blight thing and you're getting a fine. Because every possible meeting that I've gone to, everyone talks about how fantastic our sidewalks are. They go everywhere in town. And all right, I'll get off my soapbox now. So I hope you guys had a chance to read through some of this. Somebody did because somebody made a few comments. But again, the Board of Selectmen asked us to look at this, weigh in on this, and this is an ordinance they are thinking of adopting.
I would say that this was the hardest issue to actually enforce when I was in Essex. And ironically, if I was in Marlborough and Simsbury, I don't remember it coming up. I don't know why. But there were at least 3 individuals in Essex at various times where you could not get them to clean up their property. And it wasn't just a matter of leaving a few things out. It was a bordering hoarding issue. And actually in Deep River,
Yeah.
in my neighborhood, there was at least 2 instances where there's kind of a borderline hoarding issue where it's really difficult. So I just think it's a difficult thing for zoning, kind of like the discussion we just had, but when it happens in your neighborhood, it's hard.
So I've actually had this discussion a few hundred times now, and I've actually had somebody give me a lot of pointers that I had never thought of. And so a lot of this, if you read through this, it's always a citation hearing officer. And she explained it that, let's take your grandmother. She owns a home and she refuses to leave, right? But she can't cut her lawn. And you're gonna start the process by saying you have to cut your lawn. And then that involves into a fine. Now she's living on social security. She can't afford the fines. So eventually these fines build up. And now you have a lien on her, all because she's too elderly to cut her grass. Because the neighbor across the street doesn't like it.
That usually doesn't happen.
But I'm just
saying.
a harsh reality that it can happen, because people, people do complain about some crazy things. And so the reason I'm explaining it this way is because I think instead of just one person, I mentioned this at the board of selectmen meeting, it should be, if this does go forward, it should be a committee. Because you should have the fire department involved, you should have the health department involved, the zoning enforcement officer, and someone from, like human services. Social service, I couldn't think of the word.
Yeah, where I've seen that actually happen, not with the lawn, but with people not painting their house because they can't afford to paint their house, and then they get
Yes.
it ends up in a lien, and it ends up.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen, and that it's unfortunate because people really should be able to afford to paint their houses. But
So I
committee,
think a lot of
I
this,
guess.
yeah, I think a lot of this should be the simple things like, sidewalk stuff. Because that's a safety thing, or, we won't pick on somebody on West Main Street or on West Bridge Street who has, they're running a shop out of there, they have 14 dilapidated cars. And there's no teeth to do anything for these people. So I think if it's a hoarding situation, I think if it's a safety situation, maybe that's the best way to go about this. But again, back to Alan's point for the last thing, we talk about, where's the revenue stream? And I see citations mentioned in here, but there's never an actual number mentioned.
And there wasn't.
This is just a citation to mount on your wall,
Yeah.
gilded frame.
And it's,
It wouldn't be killed, it had to be.
so,
Frames cost money.
right.
Frames-
But so anyway, those were my thoughts on this. And again, please tell me, what you guys are thinking.
Well, wouldn't
So-
it have to be different for the village than it would for the rest of town? I mean, I take good care of my hedges, but being at the last driveway in town, I don't know if it's the same as somebody on Main Street.
Correct. I mean, and then that was talked about too, is does it just end at Route 9? Because that's, Route 9 to the river. Again, these are all things, again, we're just talking about this. This isn't happening today.
So I'll put on my devil's advocate hat, as I sometimes do. And
Please.
brace yourself.
All right. I get that one-sided sheet.
A lot of this ends up being very subjective. And, you look at specifics of, your grass can't be more than 12 inches for more than 7 days. There's a lot of reasons to let your lawn grow and go to meadow.
I have.
And it's, there's significant reason to do that for many reasons. There's a lot of, as you mentioned, reasons why people may not be able to maintain their property. And again, there's the patina is subjective. When you go to, I own property in Maine, and you look at all the Andrew Wyeth's paintings, the things that we, hold to be dear aesthetically, are the history that's imbued on these houses by the weather and that type of thing. It doesn't mean that the house is unsafe. And so, instituting a ordinance or regulations that are based on a subjective opinion is a tough walk to walk. And the village districts that we've adopted is an example of that, which requires a professional opinion to say that this is aesthetically not compatible. So I think you hit on the point of health, safety, and welfare. And a lot of codes and regulations are written around that stipulation, which you can determine, causes a risk to, the public and a butter, et cetera. I think if it's written as an aesthetic thing, you say, I would argue that small town America is about people having businesses that spill out into the street or, those types of functions, stills in the garage, visible from the road. that kind of thing.
So we'll go to your house. So,
Yeah, it's not an Airbnb, it's a brothel, by the way.
all right. I gotta go back up to that a little bit. So Design Advisory Board should be involved in it. If this happens and there's a commission, Design Advisory Board for the patina?
I think they should be involved in a discussion.
No?
Well, oh, I'm not gonna say no, but I'd like to say something too, like what Alan's been saying. You got something in here about, overhangs and marquee signs and such that contain rust
Rust,
or
yeah.
other type. Come on.
But that's,
So, yeah, let's break it,
Yeah.
let's slim it down. Those things that are, we want buildings that are secured. We don't want broken windows. We don't want broken doors. We don't want holes in roofs where animals and
Sure.
weather gets into
Yeah.
decay more.
Right.
So true decay, but patinaed, a little bit of missing paint, a little bit of rust, this kind of thing. This is not, now we're getting into people don't have the time or the money or whatever to be able to
Yeah.
fix this stuff.
It's-
So let's bring it right down to what's health, safety,
okay,
that kind of thing.
We
And then
don't want
look
to
at it
mandate
again.
gentrification,
yes.
but if there's a building issue, you see, and it's cited, and somebody says that we think there's a risk, the building inspector can go, it's, okay, we got a building violation that the building poses a risk because, a handrail is no longer structurally sound or.
Building has to be secured,
Yeah.
right? And
We're working towards it too, because I was gonna mention there's another woman farther down on West Bridge Street who inherited a house when her daughter passed away and she was a hoarder and she's been cleaning it up. I mean, she's in her 70s, so it's taking her a while. But so I think if there's forward progress, that should be in there too. If someone is making progress into bringing something up to code, you can't just keep finding it if they.
no, because hoarding is a mental illness.
Right.
So you bring in the social services.
Yeah.
Health department takes care of debris and garbage that's out in the yard, true household garbage. That's a health department issue,
Right.
Yeah.
right? Standing water,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
health department.
Yeah, if there's animal feces, that's a health risk. If there's,
So this can be
yeah,
Yes.
slimmed way down.
Okay.
Peeling paint and tall grass is not,
Yeah, agreed. The grass across from Calamari's when they cut it, everybody lost their minds because the butterflies were nesting there. So I'm on board with the tall grass. I know my neighbor doesn't like it, but
so yeah, I think there's a fine line between protecting people's health, welfare and safety and over-regulating because of a preference. And this is the type of thing that can pit a neighbor against a neighbor because I don't,
does this include the whole town? Because again, farm properties are quite different than. And which is why we talked about maybe it stops at Route 9. It's, beyond that, it's a lot of farming stuff.
we can look at that, or we just say that things that don't belong outside generally.
Right.
Refrigerators with
Ooh.
doors and a,
And
Hey,
I
don't be
think
messing with my refrigerator cooler, man. That's where I keep my paint.
well, I said with no doors, I mean, not in a condition for its intended use.
All right.
And I think we already have regulations on number of unregistered vehicles, that kind of thing.
And
So
that's state statute, and that's the police.
yes, exactly.
They
So
call that in front yards.
I think we should be careful about regulating and if you put,
Yeah,
Right.
we already have, where does it fall? Like, there's a limit to the number of license plates that you're allowed to have on your yard, right? I mean, is that in the zoning or?
Unregistered, you're unregistered only. I don't think there's a limit on how many registered cars you can.
Oh, it's unregistered. Right.
All right. So we'll rehash that. All right, onward and upward. If you guys are good with that. Reports, CEO. No?
What do I have to report this week? I will say that, the same as with the short-term rental, if this is something that people do want to see more references or, you know, other examples of, just let me know and I can pull some others. And just to see, yeah, what other towns have done, or even, you know, what's been effective versus what's not been effective, which might be more of like like research than you know, just looking at the whatever the written regulations are. I will say that I'm not sure who said it, but like working with people instead of just continuing to find them. I do zoning enforcement in Middlefield where there are citations in place, and that's something that for something that I did with somebody who had a hoarding situation where I had to issue them a nasty fine, but you know, as long as they responded within the 30 days and came up with a timeline with me and actually checked in and stayed with that timeline, you know, we didn't actually charge them those fines. But yeah, so I do think that something that benefits people is to have infrastructure in place, whether it's the zoning officer or a citation officer or the building official or whoever it is, you know, somebody to actually work with them through that process, instead of just saying, yeah, here's a fine, good luck. Because yeah, so that's something that yeah, I've done recently in Middlefield with a hoarding situation, and it is a tough one. Alan, I see you.
Something to consider along that line, because we, in our zoning process, in our approvals process, we've got a revenue stream which we earmark for the acquisition of open space. So if we have an ordinance that fines people for infractions legitimately, maybe that money is earmarked towards assistance programs to clean up what people may not have their, you know, the revenue, whatever. So instead of creating a ordinance which is adversarial and potentially not enforceable, because you're putting on a requirement on people that they might not be able to do it, you know, you're marking that money towards beautification, so we can assist somebody in the maintenance of their property if appropriate.
I like that a lot. All right. Anybody else that heard on Snowy? Not,
Quick one for Zoe. This is Tim. You might want to check East Hampton. I that's where I used to live. They have a big lake there that they rent a lot of properties. So they may have some experience with language. I don't know, but they could. So that might be a good town to take a look at.
Old
Cool, yeah.
Lyme, yeah, Lyme and Old Lyme did the same thing, in advance of these other towns pushing it. So, and theirs was really for the midterm rental where people would rent and have a 2-week long party. So that there was reason to do that. So I think that would be one to put in the pile of regular review.
anybody else? If not, P O C D.
Oh,
I'm gonna give us a hard time real quick before I forget. So Amy Winchell contacted me, and apparently we did not post an agenda and held an illegal meeting. So yeah, we forgot the agenda for the last, just want to make everybody aware. So we're in violation of FOI and all that stuff.
son of a gun. I
yeah.
don't post the agenda.
I know, I'm just saying, we missed it.
Oh,
Yep, so shame on us. I just want to make everybody aware of it. So next time, keep an eye out, make sure we have one.
okay.
I said it
No,
myself.
agenda.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, so it just wasn't posted.
I'm assuming it was, but again, I don't do that.
But
There was an agenda for sure. It was probably just wasn't posted.
It
It
is a
wasn't
working-
posted.
The POCD is a working committee.
it is,
Maybe I copy pasted whatever emails were from the last email, but maybe Amy wasn't on it.
all right.
I don't know.
We'll
I'll
double check.
I'll look just to see what mistake I made because I definitely was the one who sent out the agenda. But thank you, Tony, for letting me know.
I've taken the heat.
It will
No
not happen again.
For taking the heat, that's why I'm dishing it out now. But anyway, please.
No, now I'm back at, you know, back there. And actually, I'm gonna say Zoe's gonna be doing a lot of work because she's finishing up a lot of stuff. As we talked, we thought we were going to do the public information meeting at our meeting in, not December, in November. Which was before the continuation of River Road. So I don't know how that impacts that, but that's what was discussed because we thought that might be a good meeting, though there wasn't a lot on the agenda. You know, might have time to get everything out for people. We were just gonna do the executive summary to hand out, not the entire document because it's not finished, and it won't be finished because it's just an informational type meeting. So,
I'm thinking we'll be all right. If it's just Marywood Lane and they come in with all our amendments, I mean, it's
so
right there, and so it's seeming pretty light. So I mean, I would think if they're like, here, you made all your corrections, it's pretty much done. We could still go with all the POCDs. Just my opinion.
So if this is we're proposing that this is part of a planning and zoning meeting,
right, but not a public hearing.
so we can't allow the public to speak.
Yes, we can.
You can make,
Yeah,
yeah, you can make this but if you open that meeting, allow them to speak at that part of the meeting, they can speak at the entire part of it.
yeah.
Well, if we don't have, you know, much on the agenda, usually, I mean, in many small towns, people are allowed to speak whether it's a public hearing.
I
or
think
not.
it should, yeah.
We should say that they can have a public period of
Yeah.
speaking.
You can allow it, it's just.
It's just
Yeah.
gonna be a discussion. It's not an application or
Yeah.
a
Sure.
Yeah, yeah,
hearing,
yeah.
you know, it's, yeah.
Sorry, I'm still going to see that being posted on the agenda.
It should be, yes, it will have to be on the agenda.
Well, no, for the POCD meeting. Good night.
So will there be kind of an overview and presentation
Yes.
of this? So we'll walk them through it.
Yes, John most likely will do a presentation. I don't know how much he will do of the population figures or things of that nature, but it will probably be enough to wet everybody's mouth, or whatever that expression is. And then we will go into primarily, I think, the goals of, you know, the, municipal goals, the affordable housing goals, things of that nature. But fairly quickly so that people can then respond.
Yeah.
The intent is to have people talk.
And it will be available to them in advance of the meeting, right? So they can preview
Yes.
material and become educated on it and
Yeah,
talk amongst themselves. Yeah.
we'll have to make sure that happens. It's gotta be someplace at the town hall, obviously.
We'll get the upstairs, hopefully.
Right. But I meant just, you know, I don't know if, well, probably the town clerk can have a stack of
Yeah.
things.
And I think we'll do hybrid also. We'll bring the PD upstairs and I think that make it available in every possible way you can. So. And if we can throw it in paper too, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. If we want to get kind of a broad net of responses and perspectives and really make this kind of a public interactive thing. If we can get it into the paper, you know, ideally, an article or something that highlights this year, you know, this multi-year effort. And highlights some of the discussion. I think that will, because part of this is not just getting input, but getting buy-in.
Yeah.
And I think it's a crucial step.
You good?
So, yeah,
All right. on to attorney. So I have one question for Zoe. I don't know if we got an answer yet, but I actually have one other answer. So last month we asked about if I had duplex or triplex or whatever. Didn't remove a kitchen, but was living single family. So anyway, Ken Slater replied to us and basically said if the kitchen was left in place, then it's not really an abandoned use. He said, for an example of home, if it still has evidence, then it's not initially abandoned. But if you tore the house down and built a wall range, you can't go back, kind of thing. So if there's things in place that are saying that's still there, then it's still there. So I was thinking a piece of property just came up for sale on River Street. That was a triplex. I mean, good luck to whoever finds that house. But it's there. So I don't know if it's zoned for 3-family, but it's got 3 meters, it's got 3 kitchens, yada, yada, yada. I don't think anybody's lived there in 40 something years. But
Oh, that's right.
you know the house?
I always wondered about it. It looks like an abandoned.
Yes,
Um,
it's too bad.
group home or something.
Yes.
It's got these old porches. It's really. pretty.
That's when you can't see from the road.
Story,
Oh,
put it in
I
our
just-
affordable housing.
What road is that?
It's
River Road, but at the very beginning,
River Street.
River
River
Street,
Street, yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
on the way to the.
Anyway, yes,
Yes.
It is
and
for sale.
everybody died like this.
It is for sale.
Some relatives.
$200,000. $200,000.
Big deal over. Jimmy Creek,
Are you buying?
Jimmy
That's
wants
too
to.
much money.
Oh, man.
All right, we're way off topic. This is what we're after. Anyway, so the attorney, that was one thing. 2, we reached out to the attorney for, to see where they're at on 400 Commercial Drive. Zoe, did we hear back from him yet, or are they just so busy in lawsuit material that they didn't talk to us?
So I have an update, but it's not much of an update because it's all still confidential information. So I did hear back from the attorney. I cannot say anything.
All right, but they're working on the case.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Good enough. Anything else from the attorney? All right. So I misplaced my list here. So on to Chairman. So quick couple of things. The Land Trust asked me to ask you guys about, they are looking at 75 Rattling Valley Road. It's a piece of property for sale. It is a rear lot and it would, to get to this property, and this is a wetlands issue, not a zoning issue. It would be insane to try and get to this property. And what they would like to do is see if they can get some money from us, from our open space fund. But they also want to talk to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance about maybe just a tax break instead of taking our money, because we just established this fund. They don't want to take all the money yet, but they really want to see if they can get a tax break to the person that has this for sale. You know, or see if there's some other way about this, but they want us to know that they are interested in dipping into some of our funds and if we were okay with that. So they don't have an actual proposal, just giving you an update on that. So they are looking at that property, but it's 75 Rattling Valley Road, if you guys want to take a look at it. It runs up to the railroad tracks. It's a pretty big piece of property. It's right down the street from your house.
Yes.
The 100 acres up on Cedar Lake Road. Land Trust has been working with them on that property. So they actually had talked to us, or they had reached out and were curious if we would give them some money for that. Turns out the state is working with them, so they don't need any money from our open space fund. But it looks like that's almost complete. Board of Selectmen asked us to look at our ordinance. I think the best way to go about that is for us to look at it and then send it to our attorney. I know the town wants to send it to their attorney, but being a land use commission, I think our attorney is probably a better one to look at our ordinance. So in your free time, take a look at our ordinance, see what you think. I'm gonna forward it to probably Ken Slater. Ask him if it's still in line with Connecticut general statutes. A big thing that I think I would like to look at, and again, this is up to everybody, but the town is exempt from planning and zoning. And I wholeheartedly do not agree with that. If there is something that the town wants, it should be in line with our regulations because we looked at the town as an overall. And secondly, if it's something that we do have and they don't agree with it, that's what ZBA is for. You go to ZBA, ask for your variance. You need a side setback. Anyway, again, we have to look at this long term.
So
Just need your
which
opinion.
ones are we looking at?
The planning, the one that establishes planning and zoning in the town. So I'll email out a copy. It's a 2-page piece. Additionally, yes.
Statutes on 8-24 municipal improvements, and I don't see where you can,
there's 4 towns in Connecticut. I went over this in the zoning
okay,
thing.
I just didn't
Four
see
towns.
it, that
Yeah.
you could exempt them.
You had to, whenever this came up, I think it was like 1982, if I remember correctly. If you had to exempt yourself before that time period, if not, you were automatically.
That would explain it, okay.
So anyway, 2 things or more stuff for your plate. and One of my thoughts. Any thoughts from you guys? If, I mean, I don't know if we've looked at them. All right.
I agree with Tony on removing the exemption.
Yeah,
I think that
8-24.
the town should serve as an example to its residents, not an exception from
Right.
its regulations, so.
Okay, all right, so I'll get that up to you guys. Board of Selectmen are also looking, did we talk about the affordable housing study? Because I know affordable housing's been on everybody's mind because of the property from the Danellos. So anyway, spoke with them and I think what the path forward is, we need an affordable housing study. We have a plan in place, but maybe a study of some properties where it could go. My recommendation was to talk to the Board of Finance, get money for that study, have professionals do that study. And, Alan was there at that meeting with me. So I think that's the path forward there. Lastly, the Board of Selectmen also asked for an update in the affordable housing plan. There's a list of objective strategies and action steps. And they want to know where we are on some of these. And I think we have a few of them completed. But again, I'll send this to you guys. I'll fill in what I think is right and just have Zoe pen a letter to them. Answering, action 2.1. Consider with the public conversation of the plan of conservation development, implementing 8.2I inclusionary zoning. On parcels over a certain size. So have we done this? Have we looked at this? But anyway, I'll get this to everybody. And if you could redline. So sounds like a ton of homework. I apologize. That's it for the chairman. On to the budget. We're not there yet. I don't think we have to talk budget stuff yet unless Zoe has anything. Nope. All right. Daniel, you're up. Rivercog Housing Committee.
Rivercog Housing Committee, at the last meeting, they took all the different formulas that we played with for the workshop to establish potential need and basically threw it against the numbers that they have for inputs. And what it shows is that we would need around 198, like 104 in the village, and then another 90 some. Whereas our own affordable housing plan or in our POCD says we're going to lose people. So somehow they have numbers that say we're going to have growth in one direction, but we have numbers that say we have growth in another direction. So the next thing for me to do with them is to establish which are the correct inputs. Which way is it going? Because it's a huge, it's not as huge a variance as it is for some of the other towns, but for our little town, 200 units is a pretty big number. So I really want to be sure of what they have. Tony, I don't have should we add / planning since we have a representative appointed to the Rivercog planning now for reports?
Yeah, I mean, if you're prepared for that update, I will add that for next time.
Well, yeah, there's not a whole lot to update this time. Everybody complained about affordable housing, and then they did demonstrate the progress with Safe Streets that's going on, and we do have bus coming through, and they're working in that direction. And if everybody has any questions more specific about that, I'm happy to share, because there's a lot of collateral that you can visit as far as websites. You can actually go in and say, hey, there's a problem with this intersection. I think somebody should look at it, and ideally it filters back up to DOT. I believe that information, of course, is shared with the selectmen as well. But that was really all for this month. But yeah, if we add it to the agenda next month, I'll spill the tea on both of those committees.
Okay. So regional planning committee will be on there, next time around. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tony.
Sorry,
Sure.
really fast, Daniel. Maybe you already have, but if you haven't, could you send me the population data that, or the unit data that Rivercog is using? Because so the original.
I'll show you the spreadsheets. I have some nice
Okay.
spreadsheets. It's where are they getting it from? I want to
Okay.
know. I need to ask Megan about that. It's like, yeah, but where are you getting? I know some of it's from the 2020 census. They said they're getting some stuff from Chase Bank, oddly enough, and there were some other resources. But it's just so radically different than what ours is, and ours starts at the 2020. So I just don't know where the disconnect is. And what I'm feeling it is they took everybody's numbers and then they threw some overall math in that should be applied to the whole region. And it may just be a realization that, like, but that's not going to apply to ours because we don't, at this time, we don't have the jobs or activity center or other points that they factor into this to the same degree as they think we do.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because I will say as a general aside, which links back to the POCD, because that section was written honestly by a former employee and over a year ago now, part of our plan was to kind of circle back to it after the plan is written to make sure the numbers are still accurate or update it with if there's, you know, at least here and there. Obviously the census is every 10 years, but at least with some of the community survey, the 5-year surveys, just to see if anything should be updated. So I just was wondering if maybe they were using, so I just wanted, I was wondering if you could share the data and
I will
also
share it with
where
you.
it's coming from. Would be
I
helpful.
was going to do a sidebar with you and Tony as we have a little planned meeting to see if we can get some other resources towards affordable housing, and I need to supply them with the draft of the POCD, but I don't know that I'm comfortable with the draft. So you can shoot me an email if you have thoughts on that. I'll share what I have.
Cool. We can follow up, the two of us, and
Mhm.
or with Tony.
And Tony,
All right, I mean, hey, I'm fine to be left out of something, that's fine. All right, on to payment of bills. I'm assuming none. Awesome. Adjournment, anybody?
Motion.
Thank you. Second. Everybody in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Guys, thank you very much, as usual, I appreciate it. And I will get all that stuff out to you. Everybody have a good evening. I'll see you, some of you next month, some of you quicker than that.
thanks, Tony.
Have a good night, everybody.